Justin A.W. Blair here with another video, speaking to you this evening about Dreams of Dawn by author Marty Stussy, a religious scholar of sorts. I believe she is an ordained minister or ministress or whatever in some congregational church. I don't know. It does matter. Why do I say this? We'll hold that thought. It does matter because whatever this church she's from, it is a mainline American Protestant church, and I think that it is a generally progressive liberal theology. In fact, as you guys know, oftentimes I go out on the porch, I smoke a little cigarette, have a little tobacco before I come in here and talk to you. I peruse my notes and I do a little research, a little backgrounder. Marty Stussy, a scholar though. A scholar in this church. This church has basically only one thing. They believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. That's pretty much it. And then everything else they leave to interpretation for the members of the church. So it's very liberal in outlook, right? Headquartered is in Indianapolis, Indiana. Another thing I want to mention, you say, why? You say, why Justin A.W. Blair? Or do you say, why Justin A.W. Blair? Do you say, who is this lunatic speaking into the camera? Because I haven't introduced myself. Justin A.W. Blair. I'm a writer. I'm a painter. A bit of a midnight flaneur. I like to walk around late at night. It's healthy. Gets the spirits, the animal spirits up. It's good for recording. Stay healthy. Get your fitness in, people. That's a PSA. Free PSA from me. Justin A.W. Blair. Longtime listeners will know. Another book from the big book haul at a local library where I just bought a bunch of paperbacks from the 80s and the 90s. I said to hell with it. And I piled them up, but I said, I'm just going to read these. I'm going to see what sci-fi and fantasy was like in the mid to late 80s, very early 90s. And I set to work. I got to work. I used that Protestant work ethic, which I'm sure Marty Stussy knows about. In fact, I'll say it, she does. She talks about her life a little bit at the end. There's a kind of an end little section where she writes a little thing about the author. A Renaissance woman, she declares about herself, or whoever wrote it. An ordained minister and PhD candidate in Hebrew Bible. She has also done graduate work in human nutrition and written maintenance manuals for line haul tractors. She based her first science fiction novel, Forest of the Night, which, by the way, I learned this is kind of a sequel to. Apparently it didn't really matter. Did not know that. Getting screwed over a lot on that, though, with this big retro book buying haul. I'm just reading books because, I don't like to research a lot about them before I read them. I want to stay fresh, bring you the fresh opinions. And I've run into that problem a bit. I've, run into pseudo sequels, such as this. Northern Minnesota logging experience. She's done a bunch of stuff. She did some cave research, spelunking. She spelunked in Tennessee and southern Kentucky, an area I know rather well since I am from the region. Other things you don't need to hear about, but I want to say this because I have some criticisms about this book a bit. Marty Stussy's work, Dreams of Dawn. And there was a harshness in my soul with some of the critiques I had. But I do want to say that I think she is a legitimate biblical scholar. She's no bullshit. She feels like a kind of Lisa Simpson character, though, for sure. Before I did the research, I kind of took her for some sort of person from Minnesota. I think I read the little author's note and I was like, yeah, this is a Minnesota type plains person, a plains woman, a woman of the plains, hardy stock, working hard, prissy, a little prissy, liberal and progressive in certain ways. Plains prissy. That's what I like to call it. Great Plains prissy. There's a type of Midwesterner. You just have to know it. See, I come from a border region, a region from the upper South where I had Congress with some of these Midwesterners, and they're a different type. Germans and Finns and Hungarians, Hanyaks of all sorts. I'll tell you what, they are very different than the hill people from where I come from. Why do I put all this out there? Why do I say this? Because it informs the book. Because the main thrust of this book is that there's this kind of generic-ish, interstellar, vaguely United Nations type thing, but it's also kind of a cult, feels like a cult, where the nuclear family does not exist anymore. It's a kind of found family type thing. And there are some strange dynamics that go on actually in the book about that. Some uncles getting a little bit sensitive with some of the younger ladies in this book. There's some stuff. There's something about this. There's something about this. This is a real free thinker, Stussy, I would say. She's a real free thinker, and she wanted to put her free thinking thoughts in some sci-fi, which she did in the book previous to this, which I just mentioned, and this book. That, I believe, is all of the works of Marty Stussy, those two books in the late 80s. She teaches in Indianapolis, or did. I believe she's retired, but she did write a lot of nonfiction about the Bible, various aspects of the Bible, which you can check out, look her up if you're into that. So she's no fool. And is she a great writer? Is this something you're going to want to pick up? I don't think so. Her prose it's the prose of the prissy plains. I tell you what, it is not even stark, but it is plain. It's readable. I do want to say a positive thing about this. The latter third of the book, the pacing picked up and it moved me through, and I kind of warmed to the book a little bit. But this isn't the prose stylings that any of you would-be writers out there would wish to emulate, as far as I can tell. A largely forgotten, if ever really well-known author of science fiction. So why Justin A.W. Blair? Why? Why, Justin A.W. Blair, did you pick this up and read it? Dreams of Dawn. Was it for the cover? A bit. I saw this cover. I was like, okay, this blonde vixen here is hanging out with this crab person. And what's going on? It looks very 80s. I want to know what the dreams of Dawn are. What does the Dawn dream? Has that been answered? I ask myself. Circling back around, so this cult, they're like a police force, but they don't carry guns or use violence. In fact, their last resort when intervening in a dispute between a colonist world from Earth and the native inhabitants is to essentially sacrifice themselves. This is a very like civil rights 1960s feel going on here. Basically, the entire point of the main characters in this book is to regulate, watch, and deal with interactions between Earth colonists and sentient alien life. There's a big environmental message here. There's also a very big anti-colonial message here. Any theme in the hands of a skilled author can intrigue the reader and make them think. This book fails to do that for the most part. It's ham-fisted. The colonists on this world are of Norwegian extraction. For some reason, I guess the Norwegians reverted back to paganism because they wear this like Thor symbol around their neck, and you don't really hear much about Christianity at all in this. But this is a Stussy, you know, she's dreaming, she's thinking, she's speculating. This is speculative fiction, folks, and she's speculating. But she makes these colonists look like just complete lunkheads. I feel like that's something somebody from the Midwest or Minnesota would call somebody a lunkhead. I don't like long commercials in the middle of a YouTube video, so I'll get to the point quick. My own novel, written by me, Justin A.W. Blair, entitled The Haunt on the Island of Esmer, is out, available on Amazon. You can buy it in ebook or paperback format. It is inspired by Malazan, A Song of Ice and Fire, and The Black Company. Epic novels in that vein. Take a moment, check it out. These colonists are causing a problem. Now, okay, let's say something really positive about this, because there are positive things about it. A lot of sci-fi deals with speculative fiction within and around the context of physics. This does not do that. This focuses on biology quite a bit. And it's very believable. I'm no biologist, I've said many times. I'm no scientist. I don't understand science. But it's believable. The biology writing is believable. And a lot of this comes down to the colonists are farming, making food and all this. And their food, I don't know if this is real or not, I didn't look it up. The amino acid chains, apparently there are mirrors of proteins, right? Complex proteins. An amino acid, I'm going off, I'm not sure if I'm right about this. Amino acids, I think, are just chains of proteins, right? Proteins link up to build amino acids. I think that's right. There are certain amino acids which are essential and those which are not. Regardless, I guess the chemistry of the proteins can be mirrored. And this is a problem, I guess, in the galaxy, that you have to eat certain foods that have the right rotation of the protein chain. Now, the colonists are doing stuff, and these crab people, I haven't gotten to the crab people yet, which is what I'm sure you're tuned in for. And again, I want to say this is a really positive aspect of this book. She also, in fact, the high point of this book is only a couple of chapters where she switches POV to the POV of the actual sentient alien creatures. It's the high point of the book. It's really, really well done. It's believable. And for all of her attempt to put these kind of late 80s progressive messages in there, so much of it is a failure. However, her writing of the POV of the aliens actually accomplishes way much more than she could do while just making fun of the colonists, which are very conservative and like a little violent. They're a little prone to maybe doing a riot, maybe not, but they're kind of like Norwegian or whatever. So they're just kind of quiet. And then I don't know the Norwegians, and the Great Plains Norwegian people, but she seems to, and she seems to have an issue with them. That's fine. We all have our issues. When she gets and inhabits the cave system and the POV of these sentient crustaceans, it's extremely compelling. You do what I think a lot of sci-fi writers attempt to do, regardless of their outlook, which is to put you in the point of view of another, usually human, but another consciousness. And she really actually does a great job with that here in Dreams of Dawn. Unfortunately, that's only a couple chapters, but she does a great job with the biology. It doesn't become ponderous. I think that somebody who was into chemistry and understood chemistry and biology would probably get more from it than I would. But it's not technobabble, which is a term we take from Star Trek. It does not seem like technobabble anyway. Though again, I am no ordained scientist, so I couldn't tell you if it is or not. But it doesn't feel like it, and that's what's important, because most people reading it will not be. So there's accomplishments here. There are some strange things. Look, when you create a science fiction world, there are choices that are made which sometimes seem inexplicable to the reader, may have made sense to the author. They're not really hippies, but these progressive, like United Nations of the galaxy, nice people aren't actually really that nice sometimes also, which is also a decent thing she did. She doesn't, to be fair to her, she's hard on the colonists, but she isn't completely easy on the heroes of the book, which are essentially this ring of people that come down to the colonist Earth to help the crustaceans. Look, man, I'm pro crustration. I'm no scientist. I'm pro crustacean. The crustacean sentients are great, actually. But the thing about their species is, and I thought this was an interesting concept, and that's what's fun about science fiction. During one stage of their lives, this alien race. They kind of have the level of intelligence of essentially a pet, and they hang out around the farms and stuff. And the colonists actually don't have a big problem with them. They kind of get in the trash. They like eat some of the food. They're not totally into it, but there's no violence, no problem. The problem is that at that stage of their evolution, not evolution exactly, there's probably a science word for it, but they start out like that, and the colonists are getting along with them okay-ish, fine. There's no violence, and but they're eating the food in the trash and they're dying. They're dying before they can switch over into this other transition of their lifespan, which is to, I think, something called like the elders or something like that. Then they're smart, they can talk. And then there's another further transformation, I think, which requires a trial, which can be fatal to these creatures. But those who pass it become like extraordinarily intelligent, and they live back in these underwater caves. And the colonists have no, they don't even really know or believe that those exist. And so these people come down from space and they show them, hey, there's this entire civilization here. Let's try to find a way not to end up killing this. That's part of the treaty you guys signed to be here anyway. There's like political wrangling going on and this and that, but it's a well-paced book, and it's also a that which she draws our attention to in the writing is never lingered upon to the point where it becomes so annoying I wanted to put the book down. There's a lot of things going on, and it was blended together fairly well. There's a kind of coming of age story with the kids of this this space cult or whatever that comes down. They integrate into the local school. That was boring to me, but again, it was only like a couple chapters. She does quite a bit, so it never really feels. It feels a bit spaced out. It's easy to read because if you don't like a particular character, a particular section, you get through it, but it also doesn't exactly come together as a whole that well. That being said, again, this is, I think that this lady, I believe she's still alive. I looked her up. Hey, Marty Stussy, if you're out there listening to this, while I have my gripes, I'm just some lunkhead on the internet talking. And, like with so many of these books, I start out a little angry and upset about certain aspects of them, but I don't hate Dreams of Dawn. I don't. Should you read it? Who would want to read this in the year 2026? I'm trying to think. Well, if you're interested in 80s sci-fi, if you're interested in space colony literature of sci-fi, I guess. She really does. I mean, the point again, I reiterate this, where she shines is in the depiction of the mind and the setting of this cave system, the mind of the crustacean people, which I don't know. They have different names. The language thing is a little weird. I don't want to dwell on some of the small things, really. Actually, I look at some of these notes that I have jotted down. I don't really want to dwell on the small things, which irritated me. They're the small things which you'll find in almost any science fiction book not considered a masterpiece, and some which are considered masterpieces. There are, I don't know. The colonists and the people have a way of saying hello, and it's like kind of sounds like it's just a word for some reason. Like in the future, they all speak English, but then there's also just now a new way to say hello. So there's that. These first in Circle Dawn, they have space travel. They can pilot spaceships. They're going places. And yet they have to go to a market to buy food, and they don't have anyone to actually help them. There's no real exactly hierarchy within this. I mean, older people kind of tell the kids what to do, kind of, but then they're also like super liberal and they're like, yeah, just do what you feel and stuff. But so they have the ability and the money, this organization, to travel the stars, but they don't have the ability to call ahead and buy some space rice or whatever. Instead, they're hungry and they get there oh, we got to go to the market, and then whatever. It is what it is. To some degree, that is to set up a scene, but it's a little unbelievable. It's a little unbelievable that would be the case. Dreams of Dawn by Marty Stussy. It's a real deep cut. I don't expect this video to go viral, my review of Marty Stussey's Dreams of Dawn. But you know what? An author, a scholar, Marty Stussey, Dreams of Dawn. And if she had any hand in picking the cover art, pretty good at picking cover art that grabs the reader's attention. I would love to hear from people just a bit older than myself who were around back in the day. Are there Marty Stussey enjoyers out there that I don't know about? Is there a Marty Stussey fan club, perhaps, on GeoCities, which I'm not aware of? If so, leave it in the comments. Listen, I bring you the real deep cuts of science fiction and fantasy from the 1980s. A whole host of information here on my channel. It was a fine book. I can imagine in 1987. Let's go back to Dwayne from Fort Wayne briefly. Dwayne from Fort Wayne, a character which I have created, which some of you will know from my other videos. What would he have thought about Dreams of Dawn if he wandered into a Walden Books or some such place in the late 80s and saw this? I think he'd pick it up. You know, he's a bit more of a fantasy enjoyer, an Oron the Barbarian fan, but he'd pick up Dreams of Dawn. This electric pink font grabs the attention. Again, this cave system and the crab and the blonde lady and everything, it would grab his attention. I don't know. It's hard to be an excavator of such knowledge from the late 80s, the history of science fiction and fantasy. But again, my friends, listeners, enjoyers of fantasy, science fiction, enjoyers of the work of Justin A.W. Blair, writer, painter, I bid you a good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're at. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a comment, say what you will, and we'll see you next time.